See, that happened.
Now we're online.
All right, good.
Admitting our guest. And I'm going to go mute.
Okay. Good morning. Dr. Woodall, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So how was your week thus far?
Wonderful. Couldn't be better. Had a great week. Very, very enriching. I'm in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, where the terrible tragedy happened.
Oh, wow.
8 years ago. Yeah. And just every single day I get to see so many wonderful examples of people overcoming tremendous difficulties and kind of finding their way. First graders and 6 teachers were shot by a young man with a AR-15. If you can imagine, it was devastating. So it was global news for quite a few weeks, and the President of the United States came here, and it's actually going to be something I'm going to bring up in relation to the youth, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So
yeah, but that brings us to the topic of what are we talking about today? And that's resilience, part of it. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. Our speaker today for this week is Dr. John Woodall. And I'm going to quote a quote that he provided from Hafiz. "Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions." Beautiful quote. Dr. John Woodall is a board-certified psychiatrist, formerly of the faculty of Harvard Medical School, and the founder and director of the Unity Project, a resilience learning system that was developed to promote resilient strengths in youth. He coordinated the Resilient Response to Social Crisis Interfaculty Working Group at Harvard's Interfaculty Initiative. He was the coordinator of the Task Force on Accountability on War Crimes in the former Yugoslavia through Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. And for those who are interested to learn more about the Unity Project, it was conceived by Dr. Woodall, and he led this initiative from the beginning. You can find out more on Facebook. If you look up the Unity Project on Facebook, you can like the page and learn more about what it's about. Now, this week's topic, spiritual resilience in this time of crisis. This time when mere belief in principles and theologies, as important as they are, simply will not be enough to ensure your resilience in this turbulent age. Explore some of the core spiritual realities that form the foundation of resilience. Now is the time to thrive by unleashing the power of the revelation of the Most Great Name. And that being said, Dr. Woodall, the floor is yours. Please feel free, audience members, to, as we are going along, ask questions. Dr. Woodall is full of answers. Yeah.
Well, that's no pressure. Thank you, John.
Just a little bit of pressure.
Thank you, everyone. It's just a delight to be here. I'm so grateful to be in contact with the friends in Clearwater, and really whoever else is watching. We really live in an amazingly difficult time. It's pregnant with possibilities and with tremendous challenges. I want to show you the notes I wrote when I sat down and thought about how to approach a discussion about spiritual resilience for our teens. I was trying to think, how can I conceptualize this? And I came up with this. These are my notes for today.
Sounds like some very plentiful notes right there.
Can you see that? Those are my notes. So we're going to start with the basics. It really is all about love. And our youth need to feel an understanding of the dynamics of love and its mechanics and how it forms the core of everything that we're doing. And this is what I meant in that initial statement, that theologies and intellectual understandings of the faith are critically important, but they will not transform the world. What will transform the world is a fire of love, right? And this isn't me saying that. Abdu'l-Baha says that, and the Guardian says that, and Baha'u'llah says that. So I want to talk a little bit about this place that I live, my wife and I, Newtown, Connecticut. For those of you who don't know, on December 14th, 2012, I'm sorry, December 14th, 2012, a very disturbed young man entered the Sandy Hook Elementary School with an AR-15 and essentially blew apart 20 6-year-old kids and 6 teachers. It was an absolute devastating moment. We were called upon to be present in ways that we could have never imagined. I'm bringing this up not to be gory or sensationalistic, but to demonstrate that we have to have roots of our faith that can go down below that kind of experience and survive, right? And not only survive, but transform, right? Not only ourselves, but the planet. If our beliefs can't do that, they're useless. They're useless. So our spiritual calling is a destiny that Baha'u'llah has created for us to be the transformers of the anguish of humanity into the kingdom of God. This is no small task. This isn't just asking people to become members of a club or members of a community, but to become incandescent lights that transform humanity's suffering. At the epical time in history, the pivotal time in history, when we will not have the same world a year from now, let alone 10 years from now, that we have today. So we are at the fulcrum of history, and we need to be present for that. And that means we have to be attentive to the entire human experience, which includes tremendous anguish, right? Which exists on so many levels. And our kids, our teenagers know this, right? And it's not enough for us to just simply tell them teachings. We need to give them a path and an example of incandescent love. So now back to the story of Newtown. After that horrible day, my wife and I were both on the Interfaith Council in Newtown. And we were always friends, you know, all the members of that organization, you know, we loved each other, we, you know, were kind to each other, friendly with each other. But when this tragedy happened, all I can say is it ripped from us any artifice of separateness or specialty or difference. We were shorn, we were stripped of any artifice of difference and separateness. And all we were left with was this raw, vulnerable pain, right? If you can imagine. Now, at that place of pain, humans are truly powerless, just like the short obligatory prayer says, testify at this moment to my powerlessness. When you're that powerless, without a spiritual anchor, what happens is we become terrified, right? And we either move to our fearful responses or our angry responses, our fight or flight response, right? Where we become more angry at the world, more angry at someone, more angry at ourselves, or more fearful of the world. That's how our lower nature responds. It is only through the love of God, through that power, that we're able to assume another identity, a transformed identity, which is our spiritual nature, our higher self. Without that burning fire of love, we are susceptible to go to the fearful part of ourselves or the angry part of ourselves. Now, if you look at the world right now, that's all you see is fear and anger, right? In the political realm, with the issues of race, with even a discussion about the pain of someone who's suffered racism their entire life, instead of dealing with the obvious need for loving compassion and understanding, people's response is anger, right? What does that tell you? It tells you that there is no kindled fire in that person to bring them to a transformative understanding. So I bring up Newtown to say that we had the experience here far beyond our theologies, where fate, where God himself ripped from us any artifice of separateness, showed us our powerlessness, and through the grace of God, we became and are still brothers and sisters. In this room that I'm sitting, I've had the woman who founded the mosque, the rabbi's been here, many of the clergy, we've shared meals together. We've been to their services, they've been to ours. We don't see difference. The Baha'is actually ran 2 Methodist church services. When the minister was on sabbatical, he asked the Baha'is to run his church service. That's how that's how far it went in terms of not caring about names and designations. Just this fire of the love of God was all that counts. Now, just so that you don't think I'm making this up, that this is just my idea, let me read a couple things for you. Well, first I want to tell you a wonderful story.
Sure.
In 1988, I had the great privilege to be on pilgrimage, and 2 of my heroes, I have many heroes, but one of them is Mr. Ali Nakhjavani. And Mr. Nakhjavani, I came into the Pilgrim House one day, and Mr. Nakhjavani was there, and he said, "Oh, Dr. Woodall, it's so good to see you." And I thought, "Oh my God, he even knows my name." And he said, "Oh, what are you doing this evening?" And I said, "Well, I have a wonderful opportunity. Dr. Rue and Mrs. Rue invited me to dinner." And Mr. Nakhjavani took a step back and he said, "Ah, Dr. Rue, there is a man who has suffered successfully." Can you imagine? There is a man who has suffered successfully. What a compliment. It blew my mind. I thought, what does that mean? And I'm thinking, I don't want to suffer at all, let alone suffer successfully. I thought this is all about not having to suffer. Well, I was very young then. But the reality is, we must learn how to be that enkindled light, even in any circumstance, right? And so I want to show you a picture of someone and see if you know who this is. All right, let's see. This is in Mr. Adib Tahirzade's Revelation of Baha'u'llah, Volume 4. Anybody know who that is? That's the hand of the cause, Haji Akund. And look at it, look how calmly he's sitting there, right? But look at his hands. They're in chain. Look at he's got a chain around his neck. Look at his feet. Every time something bad would happen, the mullahs would blame it on the Baha'is in the early days of the faith in Persia. And so Haji Akun would, as soon as something bad happened, he'd just put his best clothes on because he knew they were coming to arrest him. And they would, and they'd come and they would torture him. And just before this picture was taken, they had been torturing him for days, and he never cried out. He was just calm, and I mean, I'm sure he didn't like it, but it didn't perturb him. He didn't become terrified. He didn't become angry. He just was this pillar of certitude. And these were the Shah's torturers. They weren't your average torturers. They were the real deal. So, and he never cried out. So they became kind of perplexed. How is this possible? So they dressed him up, and they actually sent a message to the Shah and said, "Come look at this. This guy's he's just as calm as could be. It's like he's the Shah." And so the Shah, actually there's a descendant of this Hand of the Cause who lives not too far from here. And he tells the story that came through the family, that the Shah came down to the dungeon and he looked around the door and to see Haji Akund, afraid of him. And Haji Akund said, "Your Majesty, it's me, it's just me, and I'm in chains, I can't hurt you." So it was basically this, and the Shah was like, "Well, of course I know that." But the point of this is that the purpose of our faith is to give us a sense of assurance that we are protected and cradled in God's grace and mercy under every circumstance. Thank God we're not called to be tortured, but we are called to bear suffering. And these examples aren't to have us turn these people into heroes or to think that, we need to be tortured, but to say to us that we are always protected. We are always in God's hands. We are always under his protection. He's always giving us these trials only to protect us and perfect us, which is something that the Guardian said. Now, I'm saying this in regard to the time that we're in, right? If we go to the book, Baha'i Administration, and you can see I've been a Baha'i a long time. There's like 30, 40-year-old coffee stains on this book. I apologize. I apologize to Shoghi Effendi. But in this book, Shoghi Effendi is telling us about our station and how we are to deal with the struggles of life. And there's this one sentence on page 16 where he says, it is these encouraging reflections of the Master about his loved ones in America and the tests, intellectual rather than physical, which he said he would send to them to purify them and make them ever brighter than before. Isn't that interesting? He said he would send these tests. It's said in another way on page 50. And yet how often we seem to forget the clear and repeated warnings of our beloved Master, who in particular during the concluding years of his mission on earth, laid stress on the severe mental tests that would inevitably sweep over his loved ones of the West. Severe mental tests that would inevitably, means they will happen, sweep over his loved ones of the West. Tests that would purge, purify, and prepare them for their noble mission in life. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm in the middle of a lot of that right now, right? Certainly Newtown was that, but the tests weren't to punish or to tell us we're terrible or to tell us we're inadequate or to tell us we're unworthy or to tell us that we're not good enough or that we're not a good enough son, we're not a good enough daughter or husband or wife, but it's to purge us, to prepare us and purify us, right? That's the meaning, that's the rationale. So as we go through these times, which will be tremendously difficult and already are tremendously difficult, look at what COVID's doing if you're in school right now, this is a tough time, right? All the normal rhythms of your life have been thrown upside down. And how do you hang out with your friends? How do you create a service for someone else? How do you have a job? How do you pursue college when everything is so uncertain? So this is a time of a cocooning time, a preparing time, and a time to prepare oneself with what I'm going to suggest is enkindling a fire of love that can begin the process of helping you be like Haji Akund. All right. So now we're going to talk about love a little more. And it's important because without the love, all the teachings don't make a whit of difference, right? Lots of people believe in the oneness of humanity, right? Right. Lots of people believe in the elimination of prejudices. A belief's not changing anybody, though, right? Or, right? People who believe the same thing are fighting each other. So it's love that's going to pull us away from our fearful or angry selves, right? So And what else happens when we don't have that fire of love? We're isolated. We feel more and more isolated and desperate. So it's the love of God that connects us with others. Now, Abdu'l-Baha says this in the Promulgation of Universal Peace. He says, the foundation of Baha'u'llah is love. You must have infinite love for each other, each preferring the other before himself. The people must be so attracted to you because of this love that they will exclaim, "What happiness exists among you?" and will see in your face the light of the kingdom. You must love your friend better than yourself. Yes, be willing to sacrifice yourself. The cause of God has not yet appeared in this country, right? There were Baha'is, but not the cause of Baha'u'llah yet, right? Because the cause of Baha'u'llah is believers who are on fire with the love of God. He says, I desire that you be ready to sacrifice everything for each other, even life itself. Then I will know that the cause of Baha'u'llah has been established, right? The reason America is called the cradle of the faith in the West isn't because, and we don't have this great spiritual destiny, isn't because of our superiority. It's because of the darkness here, right? So this is where the light must shine the brightest. Okay, now I want to give an example of love for a second. The love is a universal law. It's not just a belief. It's not just a nice feeling. Love is the essential power that connects the elements of the universe together. Know though of a certainty, Abdu'l-Baha says in the selections from the writings of Abdu'l-Baha, page 27, know though of a certainty that love is the secret of God's holy dispensation, the manifestation of the all-merciful. We've all heard this lovely quote, the fountain of spiritual outpourings. Love is heaven's kindly light, the Holy Spirit's eternal breath that vivifieth, that means gives life to, the human soul. Now get this one. Love is the cause of God's revelation unto man, the vital bond inherent in accordance with the divine creation in the realities of things. So if you're studying physics, if you're studying chemistry, if you're studying physiology, what holds an atom together, what holds molecules together, tissues together, plants and ecosystems together, planets around suns, suns in galaxies, galaxies in the universe. The power of that is love, right? It's not something separate from the universe. So what the faith is about is mobilizing and perfecting that love. Love is the most great law that ruleth this mighty and heavenly cycle, the unique power that bindeth together the diverse elements of this material world, the supreme magnetic force that directeth the movements of the spheres in the celestial realms. Wow. So now, why in the world would we keep ourselves from that? I don't care what you believe, as long as you have that power in you, you're doing fine, right? But where do you find that power? It's in the revelation of Baha'u'llah. It's a revelation, and it's a revelation of this divine love, right? So now we're going to turn this into we're going to crunch this down a little more. In this extremely important text called the Tablets of the Divine Plan, which are a series of letters that Abdu'l-Baha wrote to the United States and Canada. In it are tremendously powerful guidelines for how to mobilize this power of love. And as youth, you need to get really good at this. You need to be really good at love, really good at love. You need to be the shining examples of love in your personal life with the people close to you and in the community, so that people just see the love and are healed by it, are uplifted by it. So Abdu'l-Baha gives 3 conditions for how one can become an apostle of Baha'u'llah. If you can imagine being an apostle of Baha'u'llah. The first one is called firmness in the covenant, and Abdu'l-Baha explains that in wonderful prose. But I'm going to read the second one to you. wait to hear this. The second condition, and you've heard this before, fellowship and love amongst the believers. The divine friends must be attracted to and enamored of each other. Do you know what enamored means? It means like you're gobsmacked. It's like you're just, like I can't even believe that I'm with you, because this is, right? So that kind of love where you're just enamored. Usually we think of enamored in the context of romantic love. I see my beloved walk by and I can't think of anything. I drop my coffee on myself. I make an idiot out of myself because I'm enamored. Right? The divine friends must be attracted to and enamored of each other, and ever be ready and willing to sacrifice their own lives for each other. Should one soul from amongst the believers meet another, it must be as though a thirsty one with parched lips has reached the fountain of the water of life, or a lover has met his true beloved. Now get this sentence. For one of the greatest divine wisdoms regarding the appearance of the holy manifestations is this. He's saying this is why the holy manifestations come. For one of the greatest divine wisdoms regarding the appearance of the holy manifestations is this. The souls may come to know each other and become intimate with each other. Isn't that great? It's not that everybody believes the same thing. It's nice if they can believe the same thing, but that's kind of dull. It's that we become intimate with each other and enamored of each other and know each other. The power of the love of God may make all of them the waves of one sea, the flowers of one rose garden, the stars of one heaven. This is the wisdom of the appearance of the holy manifestations. When the most great bestowal reveals itself in the hearts of the believers, the world of nature will be transformed, right? With the environmental crisis, Abdu'l-Baha says later that the ice caps on Greenland will melt, and Greenland will become a rose garden because of the transforming power of love in the hearts of the believers. It's not just carbon, in the atmosphere. It's not just the bad stuff we're doing, but the globe is being transformed by the transformative power of love. There's no difference between the spiritual and the physical, and our loving kindness stabilizes and gives coherence and harmony to that transformation so that it's not chaotic and dangerous and damaging. Remember that. Okay, so then the whole world will become the paradise of Abha. Every one of the believers of God will become a blessed tree, producing wonderful fruit. And then I just have to do this one extra quote. And then he says, "O ye friends, fellowship, love, unity, so that the power of the Baha'i cause may appear and become manifest in the world." It's not so that you can feel nice with each other at meetings, that's a good thing. But the power doesn't manifest to make this transformation without love, fellowship, and unity. Those are the conditions required to have this transformative power happen. And the power of the Baha'i cause doesn't exist without it. It's just a shell of a bunch of teachings. It's just a club, like every other club, without that power. So if you want to know what you should be doing to develop spiritual resilience right now, it should be figuring out how to enkindle a fire of love, becoming enamored of Baha'u'llah. Finding a pathway to that is the cord that will assure your resilience, to help you be like Haji Akund. Haji Akund never went to a deepening. He never went to a Zoom meeting on resilience. He just was absolutely, utterly in love with Baha'u'llah. And that love so permeated his being that he knew for a fact that he was safe. He knew for a fact that Baha'u'llah's love was all sufficient. He didn't need anything else. He didn't even need his physical body to be safe. He probably would have chosen something else, but it didn't matter because the love permeated him. More than anything else, if we could find ways to be that love for each other, to be forgiving, to let go of grudges, to absolutely shun backbiting, the poison of backbiting, to do everything we can to uplift and to see the good in each other, to encourage and nurture each other's growth with this love, to expand the power and the dynamic growth of this love with each other. That would be transformative. And the world of nature, Abdu'l-Baha promises us, will be transformed, not just the human world. So this is close to what I wanted to talk about, but I think it's important that we talk first about the power of love. And just to remind you also that with the severe tests that we're all going through right now, you are not being punished. You are not being told that you're worthless by God. You are not being told that you're incompetent or that you're unworthy through these challenges. Baha'u'llah is preparing you. He's purging from you fear. There's a wonderful quote of Baha'u'llah in the Seven Valleys where he says, I'll read it to you. I want to get it exactly right. Love is a light that never dwelleth in a heart possessed by fear. Love is a light that never dwelleth in a heart possessed by fear. These are fearsome times, friends. And you as young people have a tremendous burden on you that's unique. My generation didn't have to isolate for however long we're going to have to isolate. We had different challenges. This one has a purpose that we don't all understand yet, clearly. But in this time of isolation, in this time where things are on their heads, be assured that if you hold to the cord of the love of Baha'u'llah, he will guide you through this. Guidance is assured. That's the other point I wanted to make. Guidance is assured to us, right? If we allow ourselves to be enkindled with love, right? This is what Baha'u'llah wants for us. We're being brought into something new, right? So because without the revelation, you don't know that the suffering is trying to make us into something wonderful, right? So we might fear these wonderful gifts. We might be angry that our life is being transformed. But Baha'u'llah is telling us, no, let me do this for you. I'm actually bringing you into something wonderful. Right? And he says, verily, we behold you. This is Baha'u'llah speaking. Verily, we behold you from our realm of effulgent glory, and shall graciously aid whosoever ariseth for the triumph of our cause, with the hosts of the celestial concourse and a company of our chosen angels. You, friends, are the angels, if you are enkindled with this love. Right? Pray, ask Baha'u'llah to help you. Ask Abdu'l-Baha to kindle that love in your hearts. All right, friends. All right. So there's a lot more we can speak about resilience, but without this foundation, it's all just talk. So, all right, my friends, happy to open a discussion with you.
That indeed was very, very illuminating. Thank you. Those books that Dr. Woodall cited, you can find them at the Baha'i Library online. You can find them at the Baha'i Bookstore. They are very special books directed at us Americans, not just books directed for the world, but some directed at the teachers who taught in America and so forth. So if you had a question, please, we can unmute you. You can ask your question directly.
Dr. Woodall, I actually had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. I have a lot of respect for your field. I myself, I was a psychology major back in college.
Wonderful.
With regards to love and everything, I myself have had to endure a few trials in my own life with giving it. I've noticed that like the whole blood is thicker than water thing that's like a theme that runs, that's like a thread that keeps running through my life. And I remember reading this story online about a man helping a snake. And there's a stranger on the side of the road that said, why do you keep helping the snake? It's biting you. I'm like, look, just because the snake bit me doesn't mean that it's going to change my nature to help. But he drops the snake because it bites him back into the fire. So the next time he grabs a metal bar and picks up the snake. And so I guess like when it comes to what you discuss about love, is there like are there exceptions where like loving someone in loving person A might be different than loving person B, right? Like for example, loving someone from a distance might be more appropriate than loving someone of a different caliber who's more direct, who's more friendly, who's more approachable, you would say, right?
Critically important line of thinking and question. Love is kind of like the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. It's got many, many, many colors, and there are elements that we don't even see, right? So love is like that. So love isn't just a warm feeling, right? It isn't just a sense of romantic attraction or that, and it certainly isn't, it doesn't mean that we should be unkind or unwise, right? So we can be utter, here's another story like that that you mentioned. This is a Japanese story of a samurai whose master was killed by a master of another clan, and he felt honor bound to assassinate that person who killed his master. So he snuck up on him, and he was preparing to kill him with his sword. And just as he was bringing his sword back, the other master looked up at him and spat at him. And with that, he put his sheath in his scabbard and he walked away. And he was asked later, were you humiliated? Why did you do that? Why didn't you, honor our master and get revenge? And he said, because he made me angry. And if I had done it when I was angry, I would have dishonored everyone. So now I'm not saying we should go around with swords, but what I'm saying is that there's the lesson in this is that it wasn't the external act that was the core issue. What the issue was the internal state, right? So it may be in our best interest or in everyone's best interest to love someone from afar, right? But it's important to not have revenge, bitterness, hatred dwelling in our hearts. Finding a way to be free of those things is really what the spiritual path is about. And that's where practicing kindling love is so important, whether it's through nature, certainly through the writings of Baha'u'llah, through a process of letting love seep through the different elements of our lives and asking ourselves the question you just asked: how does love want to manifest itself with this situation, with a person who's toxic to me, with a person who only brings destruction? Do I have to make myself open to their destruction wantonly just because they're cruel and have no? So no, love isn't unwise necessarily. We can still be fair and really must be fair. Justice and fairness is part of the spectrum of expressions of love, right? So yes, there's a quote of Baha'u'llah where he says we must be fair to ourselves and to others, right? So, and it takes a lifetime to get these balances down, to get them figured out, these opposites that are always asking us for rebalancing. How do we balance these opposites of wanting to be lovingly kind, but also fair with someone who's mean, right? It's a challenge. And a rote formula doesn't work. But love will guide us. Love will infuse our assessment. Right? I hope that, does that help at all? Does that?
No, definitely. I just you addressed it because I know that it's a very nuanced kind of act. Like for some people, it's easy for me to give love openly and expressively. For other people, I have to maybe ignore a few phone calls on purpose and then give the excuse of, oh, I was at work. Forgive me.
Yeah. But then again, I would also say that I think love shows itself in different ways. And love is not just effusive emotion, right? So it can be an act of loving kindness to protect your space for a while, right? Right? It can be an act of loving kindness to withhold, right? So, but asking yourself the question is really critical. One of the something I didn't mention about resilience is if we were to, let's say, have a goal of wanting to be living in harmony and loving kindness with everyone, that's a goal. But we might feel that we don't have that capacity, right? So the way we feel motivated is when our sense of capacity feels that it can accomplish a goal, right? So these three things are connected: a goal, a sense of capacity, and motivation. If any one of these things are out of balance, the others diminish. So if we feel a goal is unreachable, then we don't necessarily feel we have any capacity, or it's even a good thing to try to pursue it. And so our motivation to achieve that goal goes down, right? Or if we think it's a wonderful goal, but we don't see any part of us that can reach it, that can be demoralizing and also diminish our motivation. So the more we kindle and this operationalize it, how to turn it into a way of life, right? How to turn it into wise action, as opposed to just simply a belief. Or does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. John, do you want to ask another one?
Yes, so I believe we had another person unmuting herself. Regina, was that you? We can't hear you, no. I see two of you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. When I was a freshman, I happened to go to a presentation by Carl Meminger, and who had the great clinic in Kansas.
Yes.
He said something so fascinating to me. He said, no one who has mental challenges, he didn't say challenges at the time, but no one who has mental challenges should be in our clinic more than 6 months. You heal mental issues with love. And that fascinated me. I came from a rural farming community. I noticed that if a child was born with mental or physical challenges, the community and the family treated them as though they were not an issue. They loved them. They empowered them. And the result was they acted accordingly within their capacity. For instance, if someone was without one of their hands, they didn't bring attention to it. They let them function. And if there were mental issues, they also treated them as an equal, and they operated within their capacity. And I came to see that as perhaps the love.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. It's also very true in native cultures in North America, probably around the world as well, that oftentimes people with this, what we would call in this culture a disability, are actually seen as gifted people who bring gifts to the tribe, to the clan even. And so, yeah, I think you're right. It's our culture is cold. Our culture in the West and in the States, it's materialistic in the sense that it doesn't value this discussion. It doesn't see its worth. We suffer as a result. We suffer unnecessarily. Yeah. My wife and I go to Uganda fairly frequently, and you get off the plane and you're instantly called uncle or aunt or mommy or daddy or brother or son, or they just see everybody as their relatives, right? Which is what the Baha'is say too. We're supposed to be one human family, but they already think that. So it's in our culture, you say that to people and it sounds, odd, right? And so we highly praise and value individualism, where you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, these are wonderful virtues, but it's at the expense of our intimate connection with others, and appreciating that whatever a person is plenty. There is no one model of loving kindness. It can express itself in infinite ways.
Thank you.
These are all amazing points. I see Alex Chuniakovsky shared something. Alex, would you like to read it?
Okay. For love of God and spiritual attraction do cleanse and purify the human heart, and dress and adorn it with a spotless garment of holiness. And once the heart is entirely attached to the Lord and bound over to the blessed perfection, then will the grace of God be revealed. Love is not of the body, but completely of the soul. And those souls whose inner being is lit by the love of God are even as spreading rays of light, and they shine out like stars of holiness in a pure and crystalline sky. For true love, real love, is the love of God, and this is sanctified beyond the notions and imaginings of men. Abdul Baha.
Alex, thank you for that. You reminded me of a couple of concepts I'd hoped to share. We have a minute or two. When I was in high school, a friend of mine invited me to be in the crew that ran the lights of a play that was being done. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. But do you know how one of those arc lamps works? It's very interesting. There's two copper anodes, I think, anode and a cathode, and they have wires wrapped around them, and they're brought closer and closer together until an arc forms between them, a brilliant arc. And then that's what the light is. It's got a mirror in the back, and it shines those really bright lights at theaters. If you ever go to the opera or a play, that's what it is. So the conditions have to be met. There's no incandescent light, or there's no arc light, until you get the exact conditions. And once those conditions exist, boom, there's something that doesn't exist before. This brilliant light happens. So what Abdul Baha is saying is the cause of Baha'u'llah doesn't exist in America. There are Baha'is, but the cause of it doesn't exist because the conditions don't exist yet. The condition for the release of this power that he says is fellowship, fellowship, love, love, unity, unity. When that happens, the power of the Baha'i cause will be revealed, right? So if we want transformation, seek those three things: fellowship, love, and unity, right? Those are the conditions within which powers are released. In physics, it's called emergence, when a capacity emerges that wasn't present before. If you take hydrogen and oxygen, atoms of oxygen and atoms of hydrogen, by themselves, they have unique properties that are distinct from each other. But when you put them together in a specific way, they make water, which has completely different properties from hydrogen or oxygen, and properties that are entirely unpredictable if you know all the properties of oxygen and all the properties of water. So what Abdul Baha is saying is humanity is the same way. If we put each other together in the right way, powers are released that can fix the environment, that can fix the racial problems, that can fix our economy, that can fix poverty and, anything, family disunion. So if you look at it kind of like an instructional handbook of that, if you want to release real human potential, start there, right? In whatever way you feel comfortable, in whatever way feels natural and normal for you. But do it with that in mind, that the power of love is the attractive power between all the elements of the universe, right? Right. So, all right, I've already made the point.
It's extremely important that you brought that up, though, that you have to get the elements aligned for what it is that you're going to be ultimately creating.
Yep.
Be it light or family unity.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the quote, which I believe you may have mentioned it, but I'm going to remind the audience if you have. So powerful is light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth.
Perfect. Yeah, that's right. Everything starts with, all of life are different unities, right? Whether it's quarks coming together to form neutrinos, and neutrinos are, atoms coming together, these are unities. And each level of unity has distinctive powers and distinctive capacities and attributes. And so without human unity, all kinds of other systems start to fail also. Yeah.
So I want to, because I remember you had spoken at Clearwater a few years ago. You had spoken about your work in Eastern Europe. And in general, you brought up extremely valuable points today. And I know that a lot of people's hindrances, those I've met that are in my age, but also those that just don't believe in a God, period, they'll ask this very old question of, if God exists, why does he allow suffering of terrible kinds to exist in this world, for people to do such deeds that you would not associate with anything good? So what is, in your belief, the Baha'i contribution to these people who are downtrodden, who are outcast, who are feeling abandoned? If they did believe in a God, they feel that with an emotional argument that they have, not a rational one, but an emotional one, if God existed, he wouldn't allow this to happen to me.
Yeah, and we have to take very seriously the plight of the oppressed. People will, it's no one's position to try to explain away someone's anguish that is at the hands of another human being's cruelty, whether it be racism or sexism or the way humans can be cruel to each other. These are real issues. This whole question of why does God allow pain, the theodicy is the word for it. It is a question that theologians talk about all the time with different religious systems. Some of the answer in a Baha'i context is in some of the writings we just talked about, that it's not intended to punish or to tell us we're unworthy, but to bring out qualities that we didn't know we had, to bring out our perfections, so that we can bring them into the world. But Baha'u'llah also says very sternly, he will not forgive the oppressor. He forgives everybody but the oppressor. So, and he also says that, we must, stay the hand of the oppressor. So it's part of our spiritual work is to stop human cruelty to others, right? That it's not just loving, it's not just being accepting of everyone's actions. There are some actions that need to be stopped, and human oppression is one of them, or that whole huge category. So does God allow oppression, or is oppression what happens when people don't suffer successfully? Like Mr. Nakjavani said about Dr. Rue, when people don't suffer successfully and they take out their suffering on someone else, or they derive pleasure in seeing someone else suffer because they've suffered, right? Do they turn their pain and what was unfairly done to them into creating oppression to someone else? This is a tragic mistake, but we see it everywhere, so, right? So this is what transformation really is that when we see another pathway to a compassionate embrace of our unity in this brilliant love, right? So so the answer is, one of the statements of Baha'u'llah is that this is the age of God. This is the day of God, that throughout history, humanity has been allowed to kind of keep, destroying the divine teachings from one religion to the next. But Baha'u'llah says, this is the age in which he's not going to allow that anymore. He's had enough, kind of, and that this is the age in which justice will be established on the planet. The oppressors of the earth will be quieted. And finally, humanity can become united, and these wonderful gifts of humanity can be released through the establishing a global community of justice, right? So justice is a critical condition for that power of unity to be expressed, right? So in fact, justice is probably the most basic condition necessary for the appearance of love between people, whether it's a couple, parents, children, friends. Yeah.
So I just want to point out, I'm going to read the quote that you cited. Also, Joan had a quote she wants to share. And after that, Philip has a question on this very topic. So the quote is, oppressors on earth, withdraw your hands from tyranny, for I have pledged myself not to forgive any man's injustice. This is my covenant, which I have irrevocably decreed in the preserved tablet and sealed with my seal. Baha'u'llah. Joan, you're going to read that
Yep.
quote?
It's located in 1 Corinthians in chapter 13, starting on verse 4.
Yeah.
And it says, charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. For we know in part and prophecy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put childish things away. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as also I am known. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three. But the greatest of these is charity.
Thank you, Joan. That's so wonderful. That's probably one of the most precious gifts that Paul gave us. Yeah, that verse. And of course, as you know, in other translations, charity is translated as love. But the same basic core idea, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment about the suffering thing. Two points. One, especially when you're speaking with non-Baha'is or people that are seekers, or even if they're not seekers, non-Baha'is, and you're talking about the faith, I think it's very important to be very thoughtful about the words and language that you use, because it has a big impact on their receptivity to the faith. So for example, when you said that they make an emotional argument, but not a rational one, that kind of language would make someone like very defensive. Like nobody wants to be called irrational. So I think when you're talking about the faith to people, you have to be very careful about the language you use so that you don't shut down their receptivity. And secondly, I would say that whether the argument is rational, I think depends on your perspective, right? Like if you don't think that there's any life after death, right? If you think that the physical reality is all that there is, it could be a rational argument to say that, well, why is there suffering, right? So it's, you have to also take the perspective of, and I think in this case, you're saying like, if they said that if there is a God, right? But some people don't believe in God, right? And so then they might say, well, you know, like suffering is like the proof that there's no God. And because this physical world is all that there is. And so if you're suffering, then, you know, it's not nice, because then there's no, if you believe from the Baha'i perspective, where suffering can be a trial where you're being tested, that the purpose of that is for the next, partially for the next world. And so the perspective is an issue, but also the vocabulary and language that you use, even very subtle differences can make a big impact on the person. So I just be very thoughtful about the language that you use when speaking about the faith. That's all I wanted to add.
That's an excellent point, actually. There's a quote which I'm going to look at. I have to pull it up, so I'm not going to have it right this moment, but it's in a book that was written by a man named Haji Mirza Haydar Ali, and it's called, I think, The Delight of Hearts. I believe
Delight of Hearts. Yeah. Delight
of Hearts. Yes. So in that book, Haji Mirza Haydar Ali, in one of the chapters, which, I mean, I know there's a lot of lessons in that book, but I feel like this is one of the reasons why Abdul Baha told him to write it. It's just my personal impression. When Haji Mirza Haydar Ali describes the method of teaching, and especially from Baha'u'llah, his recap of what Baha'u'llah was saying, that no matter how heedless, no matter how far away it may seem from reality, whatever they're saying, no matter what it is, when you're teaching someone, you obviously don't tell them anything that puts them down. You listen to them intently and you investigate the reality with them. You don't by any means discount anything that they're saying. So that is definitely an extremely valuable aspect of teaching, I feel, anybody in any context, that you are investigating reality together. You listen to them so that they obviously are feeling heard because of your show of true intent to actually connect with them. And after they've felt heard, then they're inclined, hopefully inclined, to listen. And once they've, of course, felt heard and they're listening, there is that chance that they too will grow with you as you investigate the truth together. I think that it's an extremely valuable facet to practice the art of listening intently. And I feel, as John was talking about in the spectrum of love, that is an expression of love, showing them that you care and being genuine that you care, not just the expression of love, but the true expression of love, because truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. The difficulty is, of course, empathizing every single time with what someone's saying. I know it's very common right now in America, especially with increased radicalization of people's views, when someone says something that's very contrary to what your social group believes in. I don't mean the Baha'i faith per se only, I mean your social group. You may feel inclined to automatically demonize them because they are inclined to believe something you think is pure evil. And some people, they'll say that. I'm telling you, Facebook is a very, very, very open place to do this. They pretty much say, if you think this way, you're a terrible person. Well, I'm sorry, you're not going to have a conversation with someone if you have just made a blanket statement about people of this kind that believe a certain way, or even want to associate with themselves with a certain person. So it's a very crazy thing that right now I don't remember growing up with this being common. I know that this is, I feel like in the past decade, more common than it was in the beginning of my life. I don't know, maybe I was sheltered, but I will say that it's extremely interesting to see that commonly in American social interaction, and particularly in Facebook, you see this radicalization where effectively someone saying something, they're demonized because of what they may represent. So what do you think about that, Dr. Woodall, actually? Because that's, I feel, a very, very apt, especially as election time is coming around, more predominantly seen phenomena. I mean, people are, the animosity is very real, and wanting to be loving towards everybody, but then some people, because of you showing your love, they think, oh, you're one of the bad guys. How do you feel about that?
So Joanne read that beautiful quote from Corinthians, and one of them is charity tolerates all things, or love tolerates all things. What does that mean? Does that mean I let anything go, or like any abomination I let stand? No, I don't think so. I think what it means is that we want to stay engaged in the conversation. We're all investigating what's true. None of us knows what's ultimately true. Even things that have truth to them, or it's not the whole truth. And so our life is a constant exploration and unfolding of our understanding. If we approach our conversation thinking we've got the answer, we absolutely don't have the answer. So what we want to do is preserve the context within which understanding can grow, right? And that's the relationship. That's the respectful, trusting relationship where I see you as a person of worth. You're a creation of God just like I am. And together we'll try to figure out this mystery that life unfolds. And so just like you said, John, if you destroy that vessel that holds the conversation, there's no chance of finding the truth, because the truth unfolds in the context of open-hearted, open-minded exploration in a relationship, a conversation. So the first thing is to preserve that context, to preserve the unity, to preserve the respectful context within which the conversation can unfold. That's why backbiting is utterly destructive, is that it is the poison that prevents, or one of the prime poisons. And the other, another one is this accusatorial kind of discussion that blames people. Blame is another horrible poison of that context for the unfolding of truth and of wisdom. So it happens all the time in therapy, for instance, where someone will be, they have a dilemma, and maybe I think I have some kind of insight that might help them, and I say it, and they just keep talking over, and and then and hours go by, session after session, and I say it maybe 10 times, and it doesn't sink in. And then finally, one day, 20 sessions in, they come in and they've got this brilliant idea, and boom, they say what I've been saying for 20 weeks, right? And it's their idea. That's a version of what I'm saying, is that timing is everything as well, is that the way we understand things is different. And we sometimes have to evolve. I know that's true for me all the time. My wife tells me things and it just doesn't penetrate. And then one day I'm like, oh yeah. So am I a bad person because I didn't get it? No, I'm just not, I haven't grown in that way yet, right? And so should she berate me for not understanding? Or just in the loving context of the marriage, she just lets it go for a while until I kind of catch up with her, right? So the whole thing is about preserving the relationship so that wisdom can grow. And just the act of being patient with someone's struggle is itself strengthening the relationship. One final point, and that is that many virtues are opposite of another virtue. So to be merciful, let's say, and to be fair at the same time, what's the balance? Should I let this go, or do I really need to stand up for a principle here and say something? Well, there's no one answer, right? So right now we have a lot of people standing up for justice, rightly so, but with a sense of kind of punishing cruelty sometimes, right? And so how do you balance that demand for righteous justice, which is an essential precondition for a society to grow. How do you balance that with these admonitions to love unconditionally, right? How do you, so the point I'm making is that there's no one answer. We are required to struggle with these opposites, right? Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, even said it's only the spirit of a true Baha'i can balance these things. And the point he's making is there are no true Baha'is. So we're always trying to struggle with these balances. So sometimes when someone says something outrageous, they're upholding one virtue, right? Liberty, right? But maybe they need to balance that a little bit with the sense of equality, right? Or vice versa. You know, these are opposites that need consultation. They need our ability to hold opposites in our mind at the same time to and deal with the tension that creates without fleeing into some rigid theology or a rigid political partisan stance or a rigid position, right? That's where the mind goes when it doesn't like tensions, intellectual tensions. It'll go towards some rigid thought. And we need to resist that and be more patient with opposites and the anxiety and the confusion. We need to tolerate those a little bit longer to let the spark of truth, as Abdul Baha describes, shine forth so we all learn something new. All right. John, I'm afraid I'm going to have to start wrapping up myself. So
yes. I actually also found that quote, and also Sue ML posted a quote.
Hey, Sue.
I'm going to read this quote from the book, The Delight of Hearts. And I think that it's an excellent item to help us close on as well. So here it is. This is on page 110. Sorry, I said page 109. Consider the way in which the master teaches the people. He listens very carefully to the most hollow and senseless talk. He listens so intently that the speaker says to himself, "He is trying to learn from me." Then the master gradually and very carefully, by means that the other person does not perceive, puts him on the right path and endows him with a fresh power of understanding. When the final moment approached, that's it. That's it for the time being. But it's this part, it's a very beautiful chapter that anyone can read. It's on the Baha'i Library. You can actually find it. I just found it today. So the quote from Sue. Sue, would you like to read that quote? It's fine if you cannot unmute yourself. I'm going to ask you. I don't see Sue. Okay.
She was there a minute ago.
Well, I will. I'll read it out loud. Dr. Woodall, would you like to read it?
I can't see it. Where is it?
Oh, it's in the chat.
Okay. How great the multitude of truths which the garment of words can never contain. How vast the number of such verities as no expression can adequately describe, whose significance can never be unfolded, and to which not even the remotest allusions can be made. How manifold are the truths which must remain unuttered until the appointed time has come. Even as it hath been said, not everything that a man knoweth can be disclosed, nor can everything that he can disclose be regarded as timely, nor can every timely utterance be considered as suited to the capacity of those who hear it. So measuring our words is a critical resilience skill because it can damage or strengthen relationships, and relationships are where growth happens in this going back and forth with ideas and reaching into areas that are unfamiliar to us and pulling them out and being confused for a while and having the patience to allow someone to struggle with their ambivalence and their confusion without judging them, without condemning them, without forcing ideas down their throat that they're not ready for. So learning how to balance these needs is the work of a lifetime. So.
Joan just left a beautiful comment. She's free to say it herself if she like. Joan?
Okay, thank you. I was just saying, every time I hear another writing that's recited from the Baha'i writings, the more I fall in love with this faith, because everything that has been said thus far not only lines up with the Christian faith that I've been a part of for so long, it's said so eloquently. I have never heard any of these said so well. I mean, I know I sound like a blubbering idiot. I'm sorry.
No.
But that what Sue had shared with us, I could never say that as well as that. That is, and everything I've ever read from the Baha'i faith has been just as beautiful in its own way. And that's all I was trying to say. The more I'm exposed to this through the writings, the more I fall in love with the Baha'i faith.
Yeah, that's well said, John. I feel the same way. It's been almost 50 years, and I still feel like it's this vast ocean that I just keep being amazed at the beauty of it and how vast it is. Yeah, you'd think that after 48 years, something would get kind of old and familiar, but I kind of feel the opposite. The Bible is the same way, right? It's got infinite wisdom in it, right? And all the holy books are that way. Yeah. All right, John, I have to apologize. I got to go.
It is time for us to wrap up anyway. So that is a perfect coincidence. So we thank you, Dr. Woodall, for joining us.
No,
More
thanks.
importantly, for everyone who's here that has joined us today, you can find this video when we've uploaded it. It's already live now, but there's going to be some wait time between live and the posting. You can share this video, the link. You can share it with your family, your friends, those who you'd like to join next week. We hope to have you again join us again, not next week because we don't want to tire you out, but hopefully in the next few months you can join us once more, Dr. Woodall, and a lot more frequently than the years ago.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, John. And thank the Clearwater community, and thank everybody for tuning in today. Appreciate it.